She stood at the altar with a bouquet of white roses trembling in her grip, her eyes locked on a man whose love she never asked for. Her lips curved into a practiced smile, but behind it, silence screamed. In the pews, guests dabbed tears in their eyes, believing they were witnessing the start of a love story. But for Emily Carr, it was a burial of one. They say a wedding is the happiest day of your life. But for Emily, it was the beginning of a haunting she could never outrun. The ceremony was held in a picturesque chapel tucked beneath the weeping oaks of Savannah, Georgia. The air was thick with jasmine, and the stained glass windows bathed the couple in soft colors. To the world, Nathan Rhodes was a dream, a successful banker, steady, kind, raised from old money and southern charm. And Emily, she was a hometown girl turned florist, delicate and soft-spoken, seemingly plucked from a Nicholas Sparks novel. On paper, it was perfect, but beneath the lace veil and polite vows, her heart was drowning in ghosts. You see, Emily didn't marry Nathan because she loved him. She married him because she couldn't have the one she did. There was a name she hadn't dared to speak in years. Daniel Moore. Her first love. Her wildfire. The boy with dirt on his jeans. A smirk that made her stomach flip. And dreams too big for the small town that tried to cage him. He was chaos. He was passion. He was everything Nathan wasn't. But he was gone. Gone. Because 6 years before that wedding day, Daniel had left. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a final text message that read, "It's better this way." She waited. Days turned to weeks. Hope turned to rot. And when her mother grew sick and life demanded something stable, she did what so many do. She buried her grief and chose a safer path. A path paved by Nathan's quiet affection. She told herself it was maturity. That Daniel was just a phase. That love didn't need to be fire. It could be warmth. It could be safe. But love without fire, as she was about to learn, can become a smoldering regret. The guests clinked champagne glasses. Emily thanked them with dead eyes and a hollow voice. Even the wedding photos felt like portraits of strangers. That night, in their lavish honeymoon suite, Nathan kissed her softly. He told her he was the luckiest man alive, and she smiled back. But inside, she wept for the boy who never came back. She wondered if he'd seen the wedding announcement in the local paper. Wondered if he'd flinched at her new last name. Wondered if he knew she had only ever loved one man, and it wasn't the one she just promised forever to. In the months that followed, she played the role of the perfect wife. Dinner parties, weekend getaways, long walks holding hands. But in quiet moments, when the house was still and Nathan was asleep, she'd scroll through old messages from Daniel, ones she never deleted, ones she knew by heart. She would stare at the single photo she had left of him, her leaning into him, his eyes closed, his hand tangled in her hair, a relic from a time that felt more real than anything she lived now. And then came the whisper of fate. It was a random Tuesday when the email came. The subject line read, "Class of 2012 to 10-year reunion RSVP." She almost deleted it, but something inside her clicked. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her heart began to race. She clicked the RSVP link. Yes, she would go. What she didn't know then was that this decision, this one impulsive decision, would awaken the ghost she thought she had buried at the altar. Emily Carr had tried to silence her past with vows written in someone else's ink. But the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. And love, the kind that brands your soul, doesn't die quietly. Not even when you marry someone else. Not even when you try to forget. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is unfinished love. The night of the reunion arrived like a storm she pretended not to see coming. Emily stood before the mirror in a navy blue dress that Nathan said brought out her eyes. But tonight, she wasn't dressing for him. She was dressing for a memory. For the question that had echoed in her soul for nearly a decade. Would he be there? The thought had haunted her since she clicked yes on the RSVP. And now, with her makeup perfect and her heart pounding, she stepped out into humid Georgia night, chasing a ghost. The reunion was held in the old gymnasium of Crawford High. The place smelled of waxed floors and nostalgia. Balloons and school colors lined the entry, and a banner hung overhead. "Welcome back, class of 2012. There were familiar faces, awkward hugs, and polite small talk. But Emily wasn't here for memories. She was scanning the crowd like a soldier in enemy territory, searching, hoping, fearing. And then time stopped. He was across the room. Daniel Moore, older, sharper, more weathered than the boy she remembered, but still him. The same careless confidence in his stance, the same storm in his eyes. He was leaning against the bleachers, sipping a drink, talking to someone, but his gaze cut through the crowd and landed on her like a blade. And in that moment, everything she had buried rose to the surface. He smiled, not wide, just enough to let her know he saw her, remembered her, felt her, and Emily, she felt like she couldn't breathe. They didn't speak immediately. The night stretched on like a string pulled tight. She laughed at jokes she didn't hear, ate food she couldn't taste, but the gravity between them grew unbearable. Finally, as the playlist shifted into slow songs and the lights dimmed, he approached. "Emily," he said, like it was still 2012 and the world hadn't broken them yet. She turned. "Daniel." They stood close, the crowd around them fading into static. He looked at her hand, the ring catching the light. "Didn't think I'd see you here," he said. "I almost didn't come." "But you did." "I did." Silence. Charged. Dangerous. Beautiful. He leaned in, his voice low. "Do you ever think about it?" She looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day." The first lie that night wasn't that she was happy to see him. It was that she ever stopped loving him. They didn't go home together that night. No, their story was slower, more poisonous. It started with texts, harmless, nostalgic late-night texts, then phone calls, then lunches, then secrets. So many secrets. Emily began to live two lives. By day, she was Nathan's wife, the careful, smiling woman who hosted wine tastings and managed a boutique flower shop downtown. But by night, she was his ghost, sneaking away, lying about appointments, falling back in the arms of a man who had once shattered her. Daniel hadn't changed in the ways that mattered. He still spoke in poetry and kissed like a war, still looked at her like she was the only person who ever made him feel alive. But there was a new edge to him now, a desperation, a bitterness about the years they lost. He blamed himself, but also her, and sometimes in the quiet, he'd say things that chilled her, things like, "I don't care what we have to destroy to be together again." At first, she thought it was just passion, but eventually, she started to hear the obsession beneath it. And then came the ultimatum. "Leave him," Daniel said, his hands gripping hers too tightly. "Leave Nathan, or I will make sure he finds out about us, one way or another." Emily froze. The affair wasn't just a secret anymore, it was a trap, one she had built with her own hands. Meanwhile, Nathan had grown quiet, distant. He wasn't stupid. He had started asking questions. And though he never said it, Emily knew. He could smell the betrayal. But he hadn't confronted her yet. Instead, he became a shadow, watching, waiting, like he was preparing for something. Then came the test that would change everything. Emily found herself in the bathroom, staring at two pink lines on a plastic stick. Pregnant. And in that moment, the world tilted. Because she didn't know whose child it was. Daniel's or Nathan's. The lie had become a monster, and she was losing control of it. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was danger. This was a love triangle with teeth. And someone was going to get hurt. She had married a man she didn't love, try and forget the one she did. But in chasing the ghost of Daniel Moore, Emily had lit a match she could no longer put out. And soon, everything would burn. It'd start small, one lie, then another, until eventually, your entire life becomes a script. Lines recited from a mouth that no longer remembers what truth sounds like. That was Emily's world now. A beautiful house filled with carefully arranged flowers and meticulously organized deception. On the outside, she was glowing, expecting, as the neighbors whispered with delight. But on the inside, she was unraveling, because this pregnancy didn't bring her peace. It brought panic. Every morning she woke up beside Nathan, her stomach twisted in knots. He would kiss her forehead, hand her orange juice, and talk about names like everything was normal. But she knew he was watching. His questions came lightly at first. "You seem distracted lately. Is everything okay? Do you need to talk?" But beneath that southern charm, Nathan was no fool, and Emily could feel it in his gaze. He was peeling back the mask she had so carefully constructed. And Daniel was spiraling. At first, he was just eager, wanting updates, wanting to see her more, wanting answers. "Have you told him yet? When will you leave? Is it mine?" But when she hesitated, when her fear overtook her fire, his patience began to erode. The texts turned sharper, the calls more frequent. He'd show up outside the flower shop. Once, he left a note on her windshield. "You can't hide from me forever." That was the moment Emily realized something had shifted. This wasn't a love affair anymore. It was a countdown. One afternoon, while Nathan was at work, Emily opened the front door to find a man in a tan jacket holding a manila folder. "Mrs. Rhodes," he asked, "you've been served." Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper, formal, cold, and soul-crushing. Nathan had hired a private investigator. There, in black and white photos, was everything. Her and Daniel kissing behind the greenhouse, holding hands in his truck, entering and leaving a motel on the edge of town. She waited for Nathan to come home, waited for the storm. But when he did, he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He simply poured himself a drink, sat across from her at the kitchen island, and asked, "How long?" Her voice cracked. "About 4 months." He nodded slowly, taking a sip of whiskey. "Is it his?" "I don't know." Another pause. Then came the part that chilled her to bone. "I'm not going to leave you," Nathan said. "But you're going to end it now, or I will ruin you both." There was no fury, just finality. Emily nodded, too stunned to speak. In that moment, she realized Nathan wasn't just a quiet banker. He was steel, and she was now trapped in a cage of her own making, one lined with silk, but still a prison. She called Daniel the next day, tried to end it, but Daniel laughed. "You think it's that easy? I gave up everything to be with you." "You gave up nothing," she snapped. "You were never mine to begin with." That was the last time they spoke civilly. From then on, it was war. Daniel began showing up at the Rhodes estate, once in the middle of the night, headlights flashing into the bedroom window. Another time the grocery store, cornering her near the produce aisle, whispering threats through clenched teeth. "If I can't have you, neither can he." Emily stopped sleeping. She started locking every door twice. She changed her routes to work. But it wasn't enough. Daniel was unraveling. And Nathan was preparing. She saw it in how he moved. Quiet, efficient. He started taking longer trips for work, but always returned with a new piece of information. He never raised his voice, but he no longer touched her. He started locking his phone. And once, when she asked him what he was thinking, he simply replied, "Just protecting what's mine." The lines between victim and villain blurred. And Emily was standing in the middle, unsure of who she feared more, the man she betrayed or the man she had run back to. And then came the breaking point. It was a Friday night, storm rolling in. Emily was home alone. Nathan was at a business dinner across town. The power flickered. The wind howled. And then the back door creaked open. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen, hard in her throat. "Daniel," she called. No answer. Just the sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor. And then he appeared, soaking wet, eyes wild, voice trembling with rage. "You lied to me," he hissed. "You promised we'd be together." "Get out," she said, holding the knife in front of her like a lifeline. But Daniel stepped forward. "I'm not leaving until he's out of the picture." That's when the front door slammed. Nathan, a blur of movement, shouting, a struggle, and then silence. Daniel lay on the floor, blood pooling around his head, the knife still in Emily's hand. Nathan stood over him, breathing heavy. Emily dropped the blade, and in the silence that followed, only one thing was certain. The lies they had built were about to come crashing down, and someone was going to pay for it. It wasn't supposed to end like this. But then again, lies never dissolve quietly. They collapse with the weight of every truth we try to bury beneath them. And on that storm-drenched night in Savannah, the final lie had been carved into flesh. Daniel Moore, Emily's first love, the wildfire she could never outrun, was lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor, his chest heaving, one eye fluttering open, the other already swelling shut. And above him, Nathan stood motionless, silent, watching the man who had unraveled his marriage gasp for air. Emily dropped the knife as if it burned, her hands slick with blood, her breath ragged. She backed against the cabinets, heart pounding like a drum of war. I didn't mean to. Nathan turned slowly to her, voice low, hollow. You didn't stab him. Her eyes flicked down the blade. But you would have. The seconds stretched, distorted by adrenaline and disbelief. Daniel groaned, barely conscious. Call an ambulance, she whispered. Please. But Nathan didn't move. He came here, he said flatly, as if narrating to someone who wasn't there. He broke in. He threatened you. You acted in self-defense. What? Emily's voice cracked. No, Nathan, we can't. He knelt down beside Daniel, studied his injuries like a surgeon, then calmly looked back up. No cameras, no witnesses. You're pregnant. You're scared. You were protecting our home. Emily's body went cold. This is how we survived this. Emily, this is how we keep the life we built. But her silence said what she couldn't. That life was already gone. The police arrived 20 minutes later. The storm had knocked out streetlights, and the scene was lit only by red and blue flashes bleeding through the rain. Emily trembled in a blanket. Nathan stood beside her, calm, measured, his shirt stained with another man's blood. He gave his statement before she could. Self-defense. Home invasion. His pregnant wife threatened. Daniel miraculously survived. A fractured skull. 2 broken ribs. Concussion. When detectives asked him what happened, he told them the truth. I didn't break in. She asked me to come. But there were no texts proving it. No fingerprints on the door, but his own. No witnesses. Just one very bloody scene. And a well-spoken husband with friends in powerful places. No charges were filed. Daniel disappeared from Savannah 3 days after his release from the hospital. No note, no farewell, just like the first time. But this time, it wasn't romantic. It was exile. And Emily, she didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow. The affair was over, but so was everything else. Nathan kept his promise. He stayed, played the part of the doting husband. They moved into a larger house in the historic district. He renovated the nursery himself. She smiled for photos of the baby's shower, laughed at jokes she didn't hear. But at night, she stared at the ceiling and wondered if Daniel was still watching, if he'd ever come back, or if the real ghost was her. Because even after everything, after betrayal, blood, and the child growing inside her, Emily couldn't stop wondering, what if I had chosen love over safety, passion over duty, truth over comfort? In the end, she didn't bury Daniel. She buried herself. And the life that followed, though polished and perfect, was a grave with fresh flowers. Because the real crime wasn't the knife. It was what they both chose to live with after. And what they taught that child about love. The years that followed were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that suffocates rather than soothes. Emily lived in a world that looked beautiful from the outside. Well-groomed hedges, a sparkling ring on her finger, laughter echoing from the playroom. But beneath the picture-perfect surface was a silence that swallowed every truth she had ever buried. Her daughter, Lily, became her world. She had soft curls, an infectious laugh, and a curiosity that made the house feel alive again. But every time Emily looked into those bright eyes, she wondered, was it Daniel's spark she saw? Or her own? She never knew for sure, and Nathan never asked. He simply accepted the child as his, gave her his name, and in doing so, cemented a pact that neither of them dared to speak of. Their marriage became a performance. Publicly, they were the golden couple, successful, admired, devoted. Privately, they were distant satellites orbiting the same life, never quite touching. They shared routine, but not intimacy. Words, but not truth. Nathan's affection was mechanical, his smiles rehearsed. He no longer asked questions he didn't want answers to. But it was the quietest moments that hurt the most. Emily would sit by the window after Lily had gone to bed, wine glass in hand, the soft hum of a baby monitor on the table. Sometimes she'd listen to her daughter breathing, just to remind herself there was still something pure in this house. But every now and then, she'd see movement outside, a shadow, a figure too far to identify, and her chest would tighten. The first envelope arrived a few days after Lily's 5th birthday. It was unmarked. No return address. No note. Inside, a single photo. Lily at the playground, climbing the jungle gym. Emily dropped the picture as if it were a live wire. Her hands trembled as she checked every lock in the house. She didn't tell Nathan, because something in her gut told her not to. The envelopes kept coming, sometimes monthly, sometimes with long gaps in between, just enough time to lull her into believing it was over. Then another would arrive, a photo, a toy Lily had left at the park. Once, a note written in Daniel's handwriting. I still see her. I still see you. Emily was paralyzed, not by what Daniel might do, but by what Nathan might do if he found out. Because Nathan hadn't forgotten. He hadn't forgiven. He had simply adapted. But Emily knew the truth. He had filed his pain away, like a sealed case in a drawer. And if Daniel opened that drawer again, the consequences wouldn't be emotional. They'd be permanent. So Emily kept the photos hidden. She burned the notes. She pretended. Again, but the pressure of pretending, again, began to fracture her. It wasn't just Daniel watching from the shadows. It was guilt, rotting her from within. She saw it in the dark circles under her eyes, felt it in her chest when she picked Lily up from school, always checking the rearview mirror twice. Heard it in her voice when she lied to friends about how happy they were. Her life had become a haunting, not by ghosts, but by choices. One evening, Lily asked her a simple question while brushing her teeth. Mommy, do people ever leave and come back different? Emily froze, toothbrush in hand. What do you mean, sweetheart? Lily shrugged, innocent and unaware. Like when you go away for a long time and then you're not the same when you get back. That night, Emily cried in the laundry room, silent sobs against a pile of folded towels, because Lily didn't know how close to the truth she'd come. There was one night that changed everything. It was late, well past midnight. Emily sat on the front porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out into the darkness. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, from the side of the house. She didn't move, didn't speak. A tall figure emerged in the shadows. Daniel, older now, leaner, something hollow in his eyes. She didn't scream, didn't run. She simply whispered, "Why are you here?" Daniel looked at her, jaw clenched, pain behind his gaze. I wanted to see her, just once. She's not yours, Emily said, voice shaking. But she might be, he replied, almost like a question. Emily stood slowly. You gave up that right the night you came into our house with hate in your eyes. Daniel stepped closer, but she held up a hand. If you come near her again, I'll tell Nathan. Daniel paused, smirked. You think he doesn't already know? She blinked. I'm not the only one watching, Em. Then he disappeared into the night. Emily didn't sleep. The next morning, she told Nathan everything. About the letters, the photos, the porch. And for a long time, he said nothing. Then he nodded, left the room, and made a single phone call. She never asked who he called. But after that, the photos stopped. The envelopes ended. And Daniel was never seen again. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's the final act in a war no one talks about. Years later, Emily watched Lily walk across a stage to accept her high school diploma. A beautiful, brilliant young woman who had no idea the blood her life was built on. Nathan stood beside her, clapping politely. They hadn't shared a bed in years. They lived like ghosts, familiar but unreachable. And still at night, Emily wondered, did she protect her child or damn her with secrets? She had survived. But at what cost? Not every crime is punished in court. Some live in whispers, in photos with no return address, in glances that carry too much history. And the most terrifying thing? Some people never get caught, because the ones who know the truth choose to stay quiet. And that's the price of silence. Was Emily a mother doing what she had to, or an accomplice in her own undoing? Was Nathan justified in protecting his family, or was he simply another kind of threat? And Daniel, was he a scorned man destroyed by love, or a predator masked in heartbreak? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. And if stories like this leave you questioning truth, justice, and everything in between, like, share, and subscribe to True Crimes Archives. For more haunting, cinematic stories that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Because the darkest crimes aren't always the ones that make headlines. Sometimes they live quietly, behind closed doors.